I never expected that what began as a practical solution to a recurring problem would escalate into a life-altering confrontation, and ultimately, a complete break from the only home I ever knew. My name is Morgan, and for the past 3 years, I've been dating Tyler, a kind-hearted guy who lives with his mom and his older sister, Rebecca. Because our homes are so close, I often lessen my essentials at his place. Shampoo, conditioner, skincare, even a few changes of clothes. At first, it was a convenient arrangement that saved me the hassle of hauling my stuff back and forth. But over time, I started noticing little things going missing. At first, I chalked up to my own forgetfulness. After all, I have ADHD, and misplacing items isn't exactly a stranger to me. However, the pattern soon grew too consistent to ignore. It began with small items, a favorite lip balm here, a specific face mask there. Then one week, I purchased a brand new 1-liter bottle of Wella conditioner, a treat for my hair that I had been excited about. A few days later, I discovered that nearly half the bottle was gone. That didn't make sense. I used more shampoo than conditioner. In fact, my equally sized shampoo bottle was completely untouched. Meanwhile, Rebecca, who had previously complained about how often she had to buy conditioner, seemed to be getting by just fine. My suspicions grew with every missing item. I started keeping an eye out, storing my belongings in a particular corner of Tyler's room, carefully noting what went missing and when. The situation reached a tipping point when I found my personal bag tampered with. It wasn't just a misplaced item this time. Someone had actually rifled through it, taking things I considered private. I confronted Tyler about it, but he brushed it off, saying maybe I had left it somewhere else. I knew better. Something wasn't right, and the more my stuff disappeared, the more I felt my trust slipping away. Desperation set in when I realized that the only way to get concrete proof was to take drastic measures. I decided to set up a small, discreet camera in Tyler's room, positioning it so that it would capture the shelf where I kept my belongings. I rationalized my decision over and over. This wasn't about invading privacy. It was about catching a thief. I told myself that if someone was taking my things without permission, I had every right to protect myself and hold them accountable. After setting up the camera, I waited anxiously for a few days, checking the footage repeatedly whenever I got a chance. My heart nearly stopped the day I saw Rebecca on video. There she was, casually entering Tyler's room when he wasn't around. At first, she appeared to be looking for something. Then, she paused in front of my bag. I watched in disbelief as she opened it, rifled through it, and even handled some of my personal items, all without a hint of remorse. I rewound the footage multiple times, ensuring I wasn't mistaken. The evidence was clear, and I felt a mix of vindication and heartbreak. How could someone who was supposed to be family do this? Armed with undeniable proof, I knew that something had to change. I confronted Tyler about it later that evening. "Tyler, I have to talk to you," I said, my voice trembling with both anger and hurt. I saw the footage. Rebecca's been taking my stuff, even going through my bag. I can't keep pretending this is acceptable. Tyler's face went pale. "Morgan, I didn't know. I swear, I thought it was just a misunderstanding." He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "I trusted you, Tyler. I thought our home was a safe space. My things are important to me, and if someone is violating that, we need to do something about it." We agreed that we needed to confront Rebecca, but we decided it would be best to first speak with his mom. I believed that since I'd always seen her as a second mother to me, she would understand my perspective and help resolve the situation in a calm manner. So, the next day, I sat down with Tyler and his mom in their living room. I showed her the video, expecting an immediate outcry against Rebecca. Instead, the conversation took a dramatic turn. Tyler's mom's expression shifted from concern to cold disapproval. "Morgan, I can't believe you go behind our backs like this," she said sharply. "You had no right to install a camera in our house without permission. This is a violation of our privacy." I tried to explain. I did it because I was losing my mind over my stuff disappearing, and I needed proof. I'm not trying to be a villain. I'm just trying to protect my property and my peace of mind. She snorted dismissively. "Maybe if you weren't always so sensitive. always bringing up your trauma and your ADHD. You wouldn't be in a position to make such accusations. It's always your fault." At that moment, the room felt suffocating. Tyler sat there silently, caught between his loyalty to his family and his love for me. "I'm sorry, Morgan," he mumbled, but his words felt empty. I took a deep breath, fighting back tears, and said, "I'm leaving. This conversation is irrational, and I'm not going to allow myself to be made out to be the villain in my own home." I gathered my things and walked out of that house, my heart heavy and my mind reeling from betrayal. I refused to go back, not just because of the theft, but because I felt utterly disrespected and unsafe in that environment. In the days that followed, Tyler's behavior grew erratic. He was often distant, his emotional state deteriorating as he struggled to balance his love for me with his allegiance to his family. He would call me in tears, apologizing for not standing up for me, for not doing enough. I felt torn. I cared deeply for him, but I also knew that I couldn't continue living in a space where I was constantly undermined. At times, I would catch myself questioning whether I was overreacting. Was I letting my ADHD and past traumas cloud my judgment? But then I'd remember the footage, the cold indifference in his mom's voice, and the way Rebecca had casually invaded my privacy. I wasn't making this up. My boundaries had been crossed repeatedly, and it was clear that Tyler's family wasn't willing to acknowledge my concerns. One chilly evening, after another long, agonizing conversation with Tyler, in which he promised change that never came, I decided that I deserved better. I was pregnant, scared, and emotionally drained. I couldn't continue to live in a place where my presence was met with contempt and dismissal. I packed up my remaining belongings, most of which were still at my sister's house in New City, and moved into a small apartment of my own. Living on my own wasn't easy. I struggled with the logistics of raising myself, and soon my baby on a limited budget. I had to work extra shifts, rely on community resources, and sometimes skip meals to make ends meet. But as difficult as it was, there was a sense of liberation in reclaiming my space. I was finally in control of my environment, and I could set the rules. Meanwhile, Tyler's family continued to twist the narrative. On social media and in whispered conversations among relatives, I soon found myself cast as the overreacting, unstable partner who invaded their privacy. Tyler's mom would casually mention to friends how always your trauma and your ADHD were to blame for everything, and Rebecca carried on as if nothing was amiss. It was painful to see the people I once considered family, especially someone like Tyler, who I loved so deeply, choose to believe these half-truths instead of the reality I knew. Over time, I began to document everything. The missing items, the conversations, even the feelings of isolation that came with being labeled the bad guy. I started an anonymous blog where I detail my experiences, hoping to find solace in sharing my story with others who might be caught in similar predicaments. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support, shared experiences, and advice flooded in from strangers and former friends alike. It felt like I wasn't alone anymore, that my voice had finally found platform. I also sought professional help to deal with the emotional fallout. In therapy, I learned that setting boundaries was not only my right, but a necessity for my mental well-being. I learned techniques to manage my ADHD and to challenge the internalized messages of guilt that had been instilled in me over the years. Through counseling, I began to rebuild my self-esteem, slowly transforming the anger and hurt into a determination to live on my own terms. Tyler, too, started to face the consequences of his silence. In a particularly emotional phone call one night, he admitted, "Morgan, I'm so sorry for how I've treated you. I know my family's been awful, and I've been a coward. I never wanted you to feel like you didn't matter, but I was too afraid to stand up for you." His voice broke as he continued, "I miss you and I'm trying to change, but I don't know if it's enough." I could sense the conflict in his words, the pull between love and familial loyalty, but at that moment, I knew that my decision to leave had been the right one. I told him, "I deserve to feel safe and respected, Tyler. I'm not asking for miracles, just for you to be there for me and for our baby. If you can't do that, then maybe we need time apart." That conversation marked a turning point. Although it was painful to hear him admit his shortcomings, it also opened a door for real, honest dialogue. Tyler began to make small, tangible changes. He started by distancing himself from his mother's toxic influence. He'd take my calls even when she was around, and he made an effort to clarify things with his family whenever they twisted the narrative. Yet, the wounds were deep and rebuilding trust took time. In the months that followed, I focused on creating a safe space for myself and my baby. I decorated my modest apartment with care, choosing pieces that reflected my newfound independence. I surrounded myself with supportive friends who reminded me of my worth, and I slowly began to see a future that wasn't defined by the actions of others. I even started planning for the baby's arrival, attending prenatal classes, joining a local moms group, and budgeting meticulously to ensure that I could provide a secure environment despite the financial challenges. Despite the ongoing emotional turmoil, I refused to be labeled a villain. I wrote long, candid posts on my blog, explaining how I had been forced into this corner not by malice, but by a series of violations of trust and boundaries. My story resonated with many, and while some comments were harsh, many others offered validation and encouragement. Over time, my narrative began to shift the conversation among those who knew Tyler's family, exposing the undercurrent of favoritism and entitlement that had allowed the behavior to continue unchecked. I eventually received a message from one of Tyler's cousins, a quiet, unassuming person who had always been kind. "I'm sorry for how things have turned out." The message read, "I never believed the lies. If you ever need to talk, I'm here." That small gesture was a balm to my wounded spirit, a reminder that not everyone was willing to let toxic behavior go unchallenged. Now, as I stand on the threshold of a new chapter, I look back on everything that transpired with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. The camera I set up was never about spying. It was about reclaiming my dignity and exposing a pattern of disrespect that I could no longer tolerate. I still feel the sting of betrayal from Tyler's family, and my heart aches for the relationship that might have been different if I had been treated with the respect I deserve. But I also know that I have grown stronger from this experience. I've learned that sometimes protecting yourself means making painful decisions, and that true love is built on mutual respect and honesty,